Alright, what is up guys? Today we're going to finally be relocating the battery on the Eclipse. This is basically the final big thing that needs to be done before we can boost this thing. The battery needs to be moved to make room for charge pipe running directly into the intake and a few other little things that I want to add to the car. And battery relocation is always a good idea. It keeps the battery inside and kind of safe. And while I'm relocating the battery, I'm going to upgrade a few things. I'm going to upgrade all the grounds and the charging wire from the alternator and a few other things. So it'll definitely help it perform a little bit better. I'm also going to try to tighten my alternator belt because I don't know if you guys have ever noticed it or heard it before. I don't know how many times I've actually started the car on video, but the belt squeals for a second. Hopefully the belt's just loose. I looked at it once and couldn't figure out how to tighten it, so I just kind of let it go because it's not horrible. But yeah, we're going to be doing that, and then if time permits, I'll also be installing the fan wiring kit so that I can have functioning fans. And if I get the fans working, I'll go ahead and put the front bumper back on this thing. Got a few things for it. I've showed you guys some of the parts that I got in the unboxing video, but I'm gonna make like a little battery box. I got some angle iron here and some flat steel. I'm gonna use the angle iron to make the actual box itself, and I'm gonna use this flat steel to make like the strap that runs over top that actually holds the battery into place. And then we got this threaded rod right here, which I just cut. I need to go get nuts and washers that match up with this. So I've got the entire rod is sitting right here, good length left there. I'm just reusing this. I bought it for something a long time ago and never used the whole thing. So I'm gonna take this piece into the hardware store, get some nuts that fit it and some lock washers and stuff, and then I'll come back and we'll start moving the battery. Alright, so I got the nuts that fit the threaded rod that I have, and I also grabbed the other things. So I got the giant bus bar right there, the 0 gauge wire that I just ordered, the fan wiring kit's out here as well, just in case I decide to use it, and then some things that I already had. I got these 0 gauge battery terminals. These were actually on the truck at one point, and I ended up taking them off and switching to a different style terminal. So I'm going to use these on the battery. They've got 0 gauge inputs on them, so they'll be perfect. And then they've got these two smaller holes so I can add other stuff if I decide to. And then got some 0 gauge ring terminals in here as well. And I won't need as many of them because I have these terminals, so I didn't realize I had so few of them left, so it's kind of a good thing I still had those. And of course I already showed you the steel and stuff. So what I've got to do first is get the battery out, which is actually incredibly easy. I got wing nuts on the terminals, which just screw right off, and then I got to undo the ratchet strap that's holding the battery in place, and it'll just come out. And then I'll get the battery tray out, which, I mean, I really don't have a clue how that's actually held in. And then we'll get the bus bar on and start hooking wires up while the battery's disconnected. Then I'll build my battery box. We'll get that mounted to get the battery in, run the 0 gauge back, and if time permits, we'll hook up the fans. Alright, there's the tray exposed. There's the battery right there. So now it looks like it's probably a 12 or a 13 mil holding that in. This tray will come off, and then we can start getting to other things. Alright, the battery tray is now free, sitting right there on the ground. Just 2 bolts holding the thing in, and it came out. Got all this room down here now. Isn't this nice? Now I've got to find a place to put the bus bar. Don't really know where. Want to keep it somewhere close to where it was before. It would look pretty good right here on the firewall, but then I'd have to run all the power wires up here, and I don't know. We'll see. All of these wires are definitely not going to want to run all the way up there unless I extend them quite a bit, but we will see. I'm going to go try a few things out, see where I want to mount the bus bar. Once it is mounted, we can start extending wires or moving wires around. Alright, so I've decided to put the bus bar right here. I think that looks really, really clean right there. It looks like it's meant to be there, like it was factory. So I got the drill sitting right there. and I'm going to self-tap it right into place, and then we will move on. Alright, that is bolted up, and that looks really good right there. Now I've got the wire from the starter, that's what this one is. Oh no, it's this one. Needs to make its way up here. And where'd they go? All of these wires also, I think I'm going to actually solder these together and then solder some 0 gauge to them and run the 0 gauge up here to the bus bar. It'll have less wires running around that way. It'll clean it up, less ring terminals and stuff to break off. And I think it'll look a lot better. And I think I'm going to, if I can, yeah, I can just unbolt it directly from the starter, run a fresh 0 gauge wire all the way up to here, maybe to like the frame rail, and then around and to it. And then let's see, these are already right here, so I'll find a way to run them up and over. And there's the ground from the engine to the chassis, which is this giant wire right here. I'm going to run it directly from here, and then over here somewhere I'll find somewhere to hook it up, maybe to this tab where the old battery tray used to be. I'll sand this down, clean it up, and ground it right there. And I might add another 0 gauge ground to another part of it somewhere. It's always important to have good grounds to your motor and to your chassis, and the battery's going to be grounded to the chassis in the car, so I need to have plenty of good grounds from the motor to the chassis. So I'm going to try to find a place up here to attach a ground, maybe to this throttle body bolt or something, and run it over maybe to here where the old stock ground used to be, or to right here where this is. I don't know. I'll figure it out, but that's the plan. Alright, so I got this wire on. This is the ground for the starter slash engine. Sanded this tab down, bolted it, and hooked it up right here. And then the power wires also run up here to the bus bar, and then along and over to the starter. So all of that is done. Now I just need to get all of these turned into one wire and run them up to the bus bar. Alright, so I finally got all the power wires ran in the engine bay. So right here is the wire that I attached to all the white wires which run through this harness. I ended up having to buy a giant 4 gauge butt connector from the auto store, and using the hammer crimper to close it up, which is sitting somewhere right there. My pin actually broke out of it, but it still works. It was just a cheap eBay piece of shit I paid $3 for, so I don't really care. So that is done. Then I heat shrunk around it and then taped it just to make sure everything was secure, and it runs from right here, zip tied to this harness, which is also where the alternator wire is, up through here and then back under, and like that. I also shortened this signal wire a little bit because it used to be massive. I'm gonna end up zip tying it or something to this wire. It's still kind of long, but it'll be all right. It just needs to be zip tied up out of the way, and we'll be good. So now it's time to build the actual battery box, which is fun. And once the battery box is made to the shape and size of that battery, I can go ahead and put it in the car with some self-drillers. I bought them. Use 4 self-drillers to hold the box in right here, and then I got 2 self-drillers that are a little bit shorter to mount the 2 ground wires down with. And then we'll get to the fans. Safety first, motherfuckers. I can't see shit out of these. Alright, all the pieces are cut. There they are. These are the shorter sides right here, longer sides right there, and I had just enough angle iron left over. That is all that is remaining of it. So, now that that's done, all I have to do is tack that together, make sure the shape is good, and then I can start welding. My idea is to have these set up like this and have the tabs sticking out, kind of like that. So I'm not going to have a whole lot to weld to, but it'll be good enough. Or I might take it and, let me see if I can set this up. I also thought about setting these under the battery and then these on top, or yeah, these out like that, because the outside ones are what's going to be bolted to the floor of the car. So this is actually probably the route that I will go, but we'll see. And the battery doesn't have to sit super snug into this. It just has to kind of maintain its shape pretty well, as all the box really has to do. And then I'm going to make a strap that runs across the battery that bolts down. I have the threaded rod over there, which is going to get welded right to the middle like that once the box is done. And I'm going to take, I have a piece of flat strapping, and it's going to run across the battery. I have 2 holes drilled in it, and I got those nuts for the rod, which I will bolt it down with. So now I'm going to get to welding. Alright, the box is done. It is still very hot, but I'm going to hold the battery above it and eyeball it and just make sure that the sizing and everything is right. And then I can go get that threaded rod cut, clean the threads up to the point where the nuts will thread on, get it welded onto here, and then I will paint it and let it cool off, take it out to the car, see where I need to drill holes into this for the self-tappers to go through, and mark it with a marker, drill the holes through, and then I can go ahead and bolt it down into the car. Alright, so everything's done and welded. I didn't film welding the threaded rod to the tray, but here it is. It's painted and everything. Of course the bottom, oh no, I didn't paint it super heavily. It's not like this thing's going to be outside. It will be inside of the car constantly, and it was kind of hot while I was welding it, so some of the paint bubbled and burned a little bit. But I'm not worried about it. It'll keep it from rusting out real bad. I also got the strap cut and drilled, and it fits perfectly over top of this. Battery fits perfectly inside, like that. And then the strap just sits right there. And that's how it's going to work. The strap's going to hold the battery in place. And like I said, the actual box itself doesn't need to fit super snugly around the battery. In fact, making it oversized will help if I do decide to upgrade batteries a little bit. I'll be able to fit a slightly larger one in. And that's basically how it's going to work. You can tell that the rods were slightly off as far as position, but I don't really care. It's going to work perfectly. And now I'm going to go show you guys where this is going, because it's going to end up going in a slightly different spot than I thought, but it's going to be going in a better spot. So, and also, it's dark outside. I was worried this was going to happen. Battery relocation will be finished outside. I'm going to bring the car in here so we have some light to do the fan wiring. Alright, so hopefully the lighting is decent enough. I got my giant spotlight out. This is where the battery tray is going to sit. The drill will fit back there to bolt the back end down, and it'll fit up front to bolt the front end down. I have 4 bolts holding it, and I'll just drill holes. I'm going to pre-drill holes into the box itself just to make it a lot easier to self-tap it into place, because it's what I'm going to use, at least for now, to bolt it down, just in case I decide to go to a larger battery in the future. I don't want to have this permanently mounted in here. But this location is a lot better than I was thinking, which was right up here. It'll be further back, and I think it looks like it's meant to be there, which is pretty cool. Which is the lucky thing about having the back end stripped. This passenger side here also has a larger opening than the driver's side, so because of the washer fluid container that's still back here. So yeah, that's where it's going to go. I'm going to go drill holes, bolt it down, sit the battery in there and bolt the battery down, and then I will run the 0 gauge up to the bus bar, bolt my grounds in, which I will probably attach right here to this wheel well where that insulation foam stuff is at. And then the battery relocation will be done and I'll be able to start the car and move it. Alright, so the battery box is bolted in, 100% ready to go. The battery is in and strapped down. It does not move anywhere. It is extremely secure. Nice thing about that piece of steel I use, it has a little bit of flex, which is a little bit better for the battery to actually mount it down, which is nice. And now what's left to do is to hook up the ground wires from the battery and run the one giant 0 gauge power wire from the battery all the way up to the front of the car. Not going to film a whole lot of that since this video's already ended up being way longer than I wanted it to be. The battery is all hooked up in the back. I'm not going to show you guys right now. I'm not going to show you guys tonight because it is pitch black out. You guys won't be able to see anything, and I'm going to wait till tomorrow, but you guys can join me for the first startup. I got a little bit of spark when I plugged the wire into the battery in the back, so it is working. Fuel pump primed and it sounds healthy. Clutch in. Open the throttle up a little bit because this car's a piece of shit. Let's see if it works. Hell yeah! That was beautiful. Started right up. Didn't hesitate. The power wire doesn't feel warm. That was beautiful. I don't have a charge light or anything. Everything is hooked up perfectly. Let it run for probably a couple of minutes to let it charge the battery. But that's going to be it for tonight as far as this video goes. I'm going to get back with you guys tomorrow and show you everything in the daylight. And then that will conclude this video. Alright, the entire thing is done. I basically spent an all-nighter. I haven't gone to bed yet. This is the next day. It's daylight again, but I haven't stopped working on it until just now where I finished it. But it was worth it. Plus I work third shift, so it's not really a big deal. I'm used to it. But everything is done. Battery relocation is done, which you guys are already aware of. I also wired up the fans. Didn't make a video on it because I've done that once before with the truck. And the bumper's back on it as well. So the bumper, I mean, you guys knew about the crash bar. What's cool with the crash bar in there, the bumper actually fits a little bit better and it isn't quite as floppy as it was before. Still zip ties holding it up all the way around, same way as before. And I had to cut the crash bar down a little bit more to make it fit, but it fits perfectly. And now, when I do eventually bolt an intercooler up to it, it should fit here perfectly because of where the bumper sits. I'll probably have to cut this piece off a little bit, but it's basically perfect for an intercooler to bolt right up to that. And I didn't want to put it on until the fans were working because of airflow basically to the radiator. Figured that if there's no bumper on it, at least when I'm moving, it'll get a little bit more airflow to it and keep it a little bit cooler. So, bumper's on. Fan wiring followed the way the kit works, so got the one wire, orange wire, which is actually the red wire. I just recycled wire running to it for power. These green and yellow wires are the signals, so one of these is hooked up to the temperature switch, which is just a probe that goes into the radiator, and the other one runs all the way up here into the hole that I ran 0 gauge through to a switch, override switch, in the interior that I can use to turn the fans on manually if I have to. There's always a train coming through when I'm doing stuff. Right underneath of the relay is where the ground is located for the relay. And then here's the power wire, which is attached to this white wire, which powers this fan, and the other wires that power this fan. Everything is just zip tied, tucked up out of the way for the most part. The signal wire for the relay switch runs off of the bus bar on one of those tinier Phillips head bolts all the way up here. Not really much to it. You guys have seen me do this once before, so if you are curious how to install one of these kits and also how to install the fans that normally come with them, go check out one of my older videos. It's like Budget Turbo Build Prep Part part 2, I believe. It's the one, yeah, it was part 2. It's where I installed the radiator fans and everything to make room for the turbo on the Dakota. So that is that, and now we'll show you the rest of the relocation kit. So up here you can see the 0 gauge power wire running to the bus bar up here, and it runs all the way down to a hole down on the firewall, which you won't be able to see. And of course you already knew about the charge wire right there. That charges everything. I believe it's also where the alternator wire itself is. And this wire right here is the one that runs to the alternator, or not to the alternator, the starter. And I wanted to make sure that the battery wire and the starter wire were on the same terminal, just to make sure they got good contact. I was worried I might stress the terminal a little bit too much if they were on separate ones. And then of course that runs right here. Got the 0 gauge ground for the motor slash starter for both of them, basically right there. And there really isn't much else going on in here. Put my intake back on. You'll notice it's a lot shorter, obviously, because they're able to take that longer tube up there and just set it right there. It doesn't really do anything regardless of where you put it, so I might as well just make it less ridiculous looking. And let's go in here. Oh man. Alright, so I got my radio kind of sitting up here a little bit more so I can actually reach it, but here's the switch, the override switch for the fans. So if I flip that on, they kick on, and the 0 gauge is right there. It runs through that spot in the firewall along the passenger seat and then to the rear of the car, and you can already see the battery sitting right there. It looks so good right there. So let's pop the hatch open. Alright, so there it is. This is what I meant by it looking like it was meant to be there. It fits perfectly right there. Got my 2 grounds running off of it, bolted in right there. Got the power wire right here, which loops behind the battery and along the side all the way up to the front of the car. There's self-tappers holding the tray itself in. There's my metal strapping holding the battery tight. That is not going anywhere. It looks super clean, and it gets the battery out of the way of important turbo stuff. So that's it, guys. That's going to be it for this video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for this build and everything else we've got going on. Also, make sure to check out 802 Garage, see what he's doing with his GSX. And yeah, that's it. See you guys later.